Premier League concussion protocols are not fit for purpose. Premier League concussion protocols are back under the spotlight, but what needs to be changed isn't the rules, but the culture of the game. The blood was immediately visible, live on the television, around the world. We were only 12 minutes into the Premier League game between Leeds United and Manchester United when Scott McTominay's head clattered, late and uninvited, into the side of Robin Koch's, leading to a delay while the German defender was patched up. By the time the repair job was complete, Koch was wearing both a new shirt and shorts, which told its own story about the amount of blood that he'd spilled, and with a bandage wrapped tightly around his head. He lasted until the half-hour mark, whereupon he sat back down on the turf and indicated that he was in no condition to continue. At this point he was replaced, and Leeds have already confirmed that he will not be playing in their match away to Liverpool. The fact that this should have happened in a Premier League match in 2022 may surprise those with only a passing interest in the game. After all, many fine words have been spoken about football and head injuries. Everybody agrees that the latter are a bad thing, and most agree that the former is a good thing. Alan Shearer presented a moving documentary on the subject, in which he had to face up to his own fears that his repeated heading of the ball might have caused long-lasting damage. Concussion can be a similarly serious form of head injury. Didn't the Premier League put protocols in place for this sort of thing? It is reasonable to say that we have learned a lot about head injuries in recent years, and that much of what we have learned has not been good news. A study from Glasgow University, published in 2019, found that former players are 3.5 times more likely to die of neurodegenerative disease than age-matched members of the public, and also that they were more likely to be prescribed dementia-related medication. A 2021 DCMS, Department for Media, Culture and Sport, Select Committee report into how sport treats brain injuries was highly critical, with its chair, Julian Knight MP, saying, "What is astounding is that when it comes to reducing the risks of brain injury, sport has been allowed to mark its own homework." The PFA, who were themselves criticized themselves in the DCMS report for failing to fight hard enough or publicly enough to address the issue of concussion, issued a statement after the Koch incident which said, "The injury to Leeds United's Robin Koch demonstrates again that the current concussion protocols within football are failing to prioritize player safety." It added that the if in doubt, sit them out protocol is not being applied consistently within the pressurized environment of elite competitive football, and that we see frequent incidents of players returning to play with a potential brain injury only to be removed shortly afterwards once symptoms visibly worsen. So for the PFA, the Premier League protocols seem to be sufficient as they are, the problem is uneven application. The problem here is that Leeds United would strongly refute that they have applied the rules inappropriately. Indeed, they have issued a statement of their own, in which they say Koch passed all the on-field concussion screening tests that are currently part of the Premier League protocols, and the player was told that, if he developed any symptoms, he should sit down on the field of play and would be substituted immediately, which is what Robin did. Marcelo Bielsa, meanwhile, called his club's treatment of Koch impeccable. Leeds United issue statement re Robin Koch's head injury. Twitter.com Siemer Adam Pope, @Apopy, February 21, 2022. The protocols can be applied evenly, but it makes no difference if they don't offer full protection to a player. Football has limited the amount of time for the symptoms of concussion to manifest themselves to 3 or 4 minutes, with all the pressure being to get on with the game. It takes around 7 to 10 days to fully recover from mild concussion, and symptoms can take hours or days to first display. As such, it might be reasonably argued that to remove any player that suffers a head injury immediately could be the only way to be truly safe, but instead this time is limited to immediately afterwards. 2 concussion substitutions have been allowed in the Premier League as part of a trial since February 2021, with Issa Diop of West Ham United becoming the first that same month. Leeds are now backing calls for temporary concussion substitutions to allow a little more time for players to be assessed a bit more thoroughly. The medical staff at Leeds United have always been in favor of temporary substitutions for head injuries, said the club's statement, as it would allow the staff more time to assess an injury and allow a period for symptoms to potentially develop. Increasing that time from, say, 3 or 4 minutes to 15 or 20 would do more good than harm. But with much of the damage done by such injuries not having their devastating effects for decades, persuading people within the game that we may need to go much, much further than we already have to be truly safe may prove a tall order. None of this is to single Leeds out. Antonio Conte has previously accused clubs of gaming concussion protocols, and it should be clear that this has to be treated as a game-wide problem rather than becoming completely distracted by the details of one particular incident or another. It is not difficult to understand that football has commercial imperatives and that, to a point, the show must go on. Temporary concussion substitutions would allow a bigger window without coaches feeling disadvantaged by having to make a substitution there and then, although these would still be disruptive. But ultimately, if the culture of the game is prioritizing not disrupting the spectacle over the safety of players, then that culture needs to change. To start, that process requires honesty from all sides and centering the welfare of the player over any other considerations. This is an uncomfortable subject for football to have to face up to. Many people within the game might not even want to think about any potential damage that they may have done to themselves. But the Premier League, the FA and every other governing body of the game need to recognize that as our knowledge of these conditions continues to grow, we may well find out things that we do not want to know. But much as it may be tempting to put the conversation off for another day, the image of the Premier League was not helped by what happened to Coke against Manchester United, and the question of what use concussion protocols can be if they result in those scenes is one that needs to be answered as a matter of the utmost importance. This remains too vital an issue to continue to be sidetracked, fudged or kicked into the long grass.